Time to try and catch up with some of the videos from this winter's logging. I've already covered the problem we had with the injector, that was just some wiring on the forward, and I'll cover the rest of the
Ja,
minor issues
jag
we
tror
had
så.
this winter in this video.
Jag tror så.
Had a
Nej, du
hose
får
here
prova
that
där.
wanted to leak a tiny bit, and these
Ja,
hoses here going down to the grapple have something fancy with a it's like a tool-less hose replacement. There's kind of a little plastic lock thing you can remove here, and then I'm not entirely sure exactly how this should function, because we kept pushing it in and out, and I think you should just kind of push it in and it should release and kind of come undone, but didn't really play nice. Eventually, it just slipped right out without any issues at all. And I think that the coupling thing in there had come undone a tiny bit. And at the end of this like quick coupling thing is like a nut, a hex. I did not have any tools that made it possible to tighten that up. We did have a screwdriver put against it and kind of tap it and make it spin a few times and kind of tighten itself up. Missed reinstalling the new hose. We actually had extras in the machine since the previous owner, because both of the machines came with quite a lot of extra parts. So, and it seemed to hold up, so we called that good. And directly after that, the pin holding the hydraulic cylinder for the ladder to get up into the machine broke. That could be quite easily fixed with a new bolt. I think it has kind of a pin pressed into place there, but we hammered that out and replaced it with a bolt. Before we got this sold, we had started the machine, just used a strap to secure it in place and pull the hydraulic cylinder in, and then my dad had the bright idea to start it and push it out to get it in the correct position, and here I might sound a little upset in the recording behind, because I wanted to undo the hoses even if it would leak out a little oil, and just pull it out and get it in the correct length. He wanted to think that we could kind of fit it in position as it was expanding, but that didn't feel safe. And as the cylinder was quite close to the correct length we needed, it still had some life in it even after undoing a hose and then pulling it out and then tightening the hose back up, because it was hard to access that once we got everything lined up. We could just lift the ladder itself and get the pin or the new bolt to go into place, and that have held up the rest of the seasons, so that's good. Had big issues one day that it would die on us, and I'm suspecting the fuel pump, and it would start back up and die a few moments later, on and off, but once it was running good. And I had a spare fuel pump, but I know the seller told me it was a 12-volt fuel pump, and from what we could measure, it's feeding 24 volts here. I'm going to educate you a little bit later about the difference between the 12 volt and the 24 volt fuel pumps on these old Valmet machines, because all of them have 24 volt at the connection point to them, but more on that later in the video. Replace some batteries in the tire monitoring sensors. Uh, it's just some cheapo Chinese things, but and I bought two kits for 4 wheels each, one for the front and rear from China, probably. If you do want them for the forest machine, make sure they can handle the pressure that's high enough, because a lot of them can only handle up to like 4.5 bars. There are kits out there like these one that's are rated for up to 6 bars. Spent a little time making a tool out of a old piece of plastic, because here I normally have used in the past a big ass monkey wrench, adjustable wrench that's big and heavy, and this is simpler. Had a tiny coolant leak that we could track down to one of the hose clamps for some hose here under the expansion tank. in a bad position, but we undid the expansion tank and moved that to the side a little. Still, it was tricky get in there with a tool. I can't remember really exactly how we solved it, but I know we had a tiny coolant leak here. We solved it at least and filled up a little coolant. I think we had lost about 2 liters or something, not a whole lot, so it wasn't bad. And now we're going back to the fuel pump again, because it had been running good for a couple of weeks since that one day when it was really cranky and started and stopped a whole bunch of times. But we made it out of the forest and tried running it one more day without issues, and now a couple of weeks later it was cranky, and I took the decision to replace it, even if it's quite expensive with a new original unit. And I ordered that 24 volt version. If you undo a couple of the bolts here, you can kind of fold the main switch, electrical main switch, out of the way and have a little more access. Undid the electrical connections to it. And then from this, I think this is supposed to be called like the pre-filter that you have under the pump itself, and then you have a fine filter that the fuel is also fed through before it enters the main pump. There is like two. I let the hose follow. It's connected up there because it's a fuel switch over by the electrical switch also. So I did a hose there, and then the connection between the two filters, and then there are 2 bolts in there holding the entire assembly in place. We undid the filter on the old unit, and we needed to reuse some of the connections from the old unit onto the new housing. And here you can see this thing, that's a big resistor, and this is actually a 12 volt pump, and I could probably have used the 12 volt pump had I just moved over this resistor unit, because apparently they just used the big resistors to kind of not kill the 12 volt pump feeding 24 volts to it. I realized this is mounted like onto the fuel line to help cool the resistor, as that probably heats up quite a bit to take the extra power that's to reduce the voltage over the 12 volt pump. But now I had bought the 24 volt unit, that's an upgrade already, but I'm gonna put this resistor in place on the unit I know is a 12 volt, and I might have a replacement to try if I have more problems in the future. Hopefully this machine won't have any problems, but I think it's the exact same kind of pump setup on the harvester also. Added some heat to some of the connectors and plugs I needed to remove from the old unit, because they were on there quite tight. I'm not sure if they used strong Loctite or some sealant over the years, but came out without too much trouble. The plugs and so on had copper washers on them. There was an O-ring at some place. I replaced most of it and added a drop of thread sealant to all the threads also, and it held up eventually. Spoiler. With everything bolted in place, it was a matter of getting it back onto the machine. It was a little tricky getting it back into place and getting the threads for the connection between the filters to start grabbing on, but not too bad. It was a little bit cold, so I worked with gloves, inserted the bolts that holds the unit in place, but only lightly tightened them. I wanted to tighten up the coupling between the filters first, so it could move side to side before tightening up the bolts in the back. And once all of that was done, the hose had to be replaced also. That's not seen on here. And then you could get the electric main switch back into position and bolt that back up. And it refused to start. the batteries were too weak, and it had been started and stopped a few too many times, and it was quite cold. So it was a no-go. We brought out two kind of good car batteries and hooked them up, but that was also way too weak to get this started. So the harvester was brought over to have something with a little more power to see if it would start again. Since we have already brought over the other machine, and we let that charge for quite a long time and ran the diesel heater some more, and it fired up as happy as ever. A couple of times my dad was able to pull up that kind of loose extension horn. We lost one last winter, and I got this chrome tube extension that I could get hold of that's a suitable size, and this year he has noticed right away as he has managed to pull it up, and with a stick through it it's possible to wiggle it into place. Next up, cold, and it was cranky to start, and caused issues. We had to bump start it a few more times and realized we are giving up on the old batteries, and Biltema was what we could get hold of on short notice, so we ended up with Biltema batteries in it. Let's see how that holds up. And next up, and I think this was the last issue, is the hydraulic hose here in the grapple that started spraying oil. And this time also there was a spare hose in the machine that could be used. It was a little bit longer than the one that was on there, but it was the correct couplings, and so it was a quick fix undoing it. I just had adjustable wrench and pliers, but worked good enough that we could keep going. And those were all the problems with the forwarder. There will be another video with the harvester's problem. They were bigger in some ways, but season is finished, everything went well, nobody got hurt. So that's it for now. Take care.